Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2012, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee? Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Thal?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas the desire of this governing body to comply with the provision of this act, at the same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in a formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. We're sorry that we, starting a little late, we had some contractual items that we had to address inside before this meeting started. We're going to start off with our public comment. If you didn't get an agenda, we have copies up here. We're going to have our public comment period, the first one. Item number 6, we were to have a hearing on terminating the redevelopment agreement of Davies LLC. Davies 14 LLC is the redeveloper for the lot across the street at 1611 Springfield Avenue. We heard from his attorney that he is out of the country, unable to be here tonight, so we're going to table this until the meeting of October 1st. We have an introduction of 2 ordinances tonight. One is to make some changes to the licensing of dogs and cats, and the other is to reduce the speed limit on Valley Street from 35 miles to 25 miles. We have 6 discussion items. One is the request for proposals for 60 Woodland Road, which is the former Women's Club. We're going to be talking about residential fences, 4 feet versus 6 feet. The garbage collection ordinance, we have seems a growing number of garbage bags that are being put out in front of the homes. We have 2014 jitney fee increase proposal, rental registration conversation, and the 6th item for discussion is the start time for contractors to begin their work. We have a consent agenda. The consent agenda has an interlocal agreement with non-public schools in Maplewood and South Orange to provide nursing services. We have a resolution designating the former PSE&G site as an area in need of redevelopment. That's Block 44.02, Lot 2. We're going to be extending the leaf hauling contract for Nature's Choice for another 2 years. We have a resolution to do some milling and paving of various roads under the Morris County Cooperative Pricing Council. We have a resolution to pay bills, and then we have the approval of minutes from September 3rd. And that is our, then we'll come back and we have our second public comment period. We have administrative reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. So with that, we're going to start the first public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? We ask you to just come up, give us your name and address, this microphone, you really need to get close to it up there, because we have people tell us that they can't hear folks. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
Is it for agenda items only?
No.
Good evening, my name is Wendy Louder, 28 Summer Avenue, Maplewood. I actually will briefly address one of the agenda items I saw, which is the discussion it looks like you're going to have to reduce the speed limit on Valley Street from 35 miles per hour to 25. I noticed that briefly before I came here and looked at it again on the agenda. I just want to state that for the record, just as I would be, I am against that reduction. It's not just a county road, it's a major thoroughfare. To reduce it when on either side of both towns, I think maybe South Orange might be 30, is just would seem unfair to the people driving. And in addition, Wyoming Avenue, I believe, is 35, as is Springfield Avenue. These are thoroughfares. What I would request, though, is that the traffic speed laws get enforced, regardless of whether it's 35 or the 25 on Prospect or Ridgewood. What I did want to just request that the Township Committee look into is there was some discussion on our community message board, Maplewood Online, and I did a little research. And several years ago, as you might know, this Township Committee came up with an ordinance regarding the flyers. I don't remember the number. I meant to take some notes, 196-something or 193-something. And basically, that ordinance, probably based on case law at the time, determined that you could not totally ban flyers, that it was considered commercial speech. And I think based on the case law, it still is probably commercial speech. But what you could do is allow people to opt out of it and impose fines for the companies that intentionally disregarded that. And that's what it states in the ordinance. The problem is enforceability. I've done a little research and I see that there are other towns that actually have different types of ordinances that I would strongly suggest the Township Committee now look into. I actually see you have some kind of, you're concerned about garbage on the streets, the contractors, putting things on the sidewalk. Well, I would be concerned about these blue bags that people either don't even realize there's a number to call or call and nothing happens. There has to be follow-up. So what I would suggest is the Township Committee looks into, I think it's Brigantine does an opt-in. You must opt in. There's another, I think it's Philadelphia, that I read somewhere that says you can request a big sticker from the Township Committee or the Philadelphia Committee that basically says, don't put something at my property. And then it's up to the township, some inspector, to go along and see if that person has a big, do not, and then it's there, then whoever did that will get some type of fine. Put the burden back on both the company, and I would just ask the township to consider looking into it, because apparently this has resurrected itself again. There are some people who are going to be diligent and push and remind them of the fines, but those people are sort of like me and talking about noise ordinances and might be lawyers. So I would suggest you look into it. Thank you.
You're talking about the bag that comes with all the circulars?
Yes.
Okay. Are you still getting it and you don't
No,
want?
I'm not.
Okay.
I think I might have gotten one in the past few weeks, and I was too busy to save the bag and make
Right.
a call.
Because I haven't gotten
There are some
them.
people, someone who actually posts, well, she sort of posts on her real name.
Microphone.
There is someone who mentioned that it happened to her recently. When she called, the person said to her, yes, I see you called several years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when I said to SAC, who's known as SAC on Maplewood Online, that's ridiculous. And you should bring that to the Township Committee's attention for enforcement, because that's intentional violation. And she goes, well, how do I prove that? I said, just tell the Township Committee. Who would enforce it? I said, I don't know, SAC. It's either the prosecutor. I don't know. I'm not versed in this, but clearly I'm assuming there is an enforcement mechanism. Whether you have had history doing it or not, I would suggest you look into it, but more importantly, I would suggest you look into how to make this a better ordinance, and perhaps an opt-in ordinance.
You said you thought that it was Brigantine that did this? You said, I think you said that,
Don't quote me on that, Jerry. I did my research, and what I was going to say is if this was going to be for agenda items only, and I wanted to go home and watch the Mets because Seinfeld's actually on the broadcast, I was going to say, look for an email from me to the Township Committee where I give you the ordinances, at least that I see, and I'll still send it.
Well, since you brought it up, just so people know, if you do not want that, what we negotiated with them many years ago is that if you do not want it, there's an 800 number on the bag. Because like you, I have not been receiving it for over 10 years, and then sometime, I think in July, I received it twice. One week and then the next week. And I called the 800 number and it stopped again. So I just think that if someone doesn't want it, that was the deal we made, is to opt out by calling that 800 number. And if that doesn't work, then folks should let us know, and then we'll follow up with the company.
Right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee? Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Saccone, 167 Maplewood Avenue, apartment number 4. Yeah, the reason for my attendance tonight is because I have become aware of a very concerned citizenry that has looked to make a statement to the Township Committee in reference to the seeming lack of transparency with regard to proposals for the redevelopment of the post office space. I find it very interesting that this public comment period has been changed to beginning of the meeting and off agenda items. And if I might ask, why is that the case?
this is the way that we always conduct the meetings. There's always 2 public comments
That
periods.
just goes to, Mr. Ryan, thank you, that just goes to prove it's my first committee meeting. So, I am representing, I know, myself as well as my sister Margie Schulke, 473 Elmwood Avenue, who's with me tonight. And there are a number of people here tonight who I was at a meeting with last night, and I know that there is a very strong concern in the community that has not been properly voiced as to the RFP on the post office and the process therein. And I believe that we have a very short window of opportunity before you are awarding said development. And as someone who lived here, raised here, and has been a member of this community for 54 years, I am really disappointed at what I seem to be understanding as to how this has progressed to this point. So I want to go on record as saying that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jose Gonzalez, 33 Meadowbrook Road. I'd like to address the Township Committee tonight to talk about the fence discussion, 4 feet versus 6 feet. I'm not exactly sure why or how an ordinance was placed to have a fence be at a maximum height of 4 feet. But recently I've heard a lot of burglaries in the neighborhood, and of course there was a shooting here and a shooting in Millburn, home invasion in Millburn, and I'm a new father, and I'm just a little worried that I would want to take every possible opportunity to protect my family. And I recently wanted to put up a fence to enclose my yard. I was told that I could not go above 4 feet. And I think that even though it is just a matter of 2 feet, that those 2 feet can be a deterrent to having, intruders coming into folks' yards. And I would like to hope that that would be resolved and I could do a 6-foot fence. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, it was your letter that prompted me to
Yeah.
put it on the agenda, so we are going to have that conversation, so if you stick around. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close the first public hearing. There will be another one later on. We need a motion to table the hearing on the redevelopment agreement and designation of Davies 14 till October 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We have an ordinance on introduction.
Mr. Mayor, item number 8, introduction of new ordinance, ordinance 2729-13. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 113 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Dogs, Cats, and Other Animals. This ordinance will make certain changes to the licensing of dogs and cats within the Township of Maplewood.
Mrs. Larrier?
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and hearing to be held on October 1st.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would
Just,
point out that this ordinance, we're just really amending we're amending a few things, but the one big thing that I do want to make sure everybody is aware of is the deadline for dog and cat licenses, which will now be December 31st, with the grace period until January 31st.
please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. We have another ordinance on introduction.
Mr. Mayor, item number 9, introduction of new ordinance, ordinance 2730-13. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will reduce the speed limit on Valley Street from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
move
Ryan.
the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, with the hearing to be held on October 1st.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, in addition to the comment that Ms. Louder made, I've received a number of other emails from folks asking about the advisability of doing this, given that there'd be a different speed limit when you go over the border into South Orange. Folks from the South Orange Village Board of Trustees saw a press report about this and are interested in doing the same thing. So when we discussed this last, I believe I suggested that if we were to do this, we ought to at least inform South Orange that we shouldn't, if we thought it was a good idea, we shouldn't wait to do it for South Orange to do it, but that they might want to go ahead and do it, and in fact they are. So, when we have a public hearing about it, I'd be interested to know if folks who express some concerns about it would feel differently about it, knowing that South Orange is moving in the same direction, and that it would in fact be 25 miles an hour straight through along the entire length of Valley and Scotland, all the way to the Orange border. So that's the only thing I'd just like to add that we haven't already discussed.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Ms. Fritzen, would you send a copy of this ordinance with a memo that we've introduced it, and it'll be considered on final on October 1st to the clerk of South Orange?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Now, both of those ordinances, the way ordinances work is at one meeting you introduce it, and the next meeting, which is at least 2 weeks later, you have a final consideration after you have a public hearing. So both of those ordinances will have a public hearing on October 1st, and then we will consider on final passage that evening. We're now going to move to the discussion items, and we have 6. We're on item number 10 on the agenda. The first discussion item is 60 Woodland Road, the request for proposals. Mr. Manning?
Well, it's sort of Mr. Manning and I. Just to remind folks, when we acquired the 60 Woodland Road property, we formed a task force to try and decide how we would like the building to be used. We decided that the best thing to do was to pursue an interim agreement, which we're currently operating under. So the building is currently being operated by, I guess we call it an interim partner through the end of the year. And we decided that we would monitor the progress under that contract and use some of the things that we discussed from the task force meetings and anything we might learn from actual operation of the building to draft a longer-term request for proposals. So Mr. Manning's prepared a first draft of this with 16 criteria in it. I don't know if we're prepared to discuss this at length tonight and say that we're okay to go ahead and move forward, or if we just wanted to introduce the fact that I'm sorry, Joe.
No, I was going to suggest that what you could do is everyone review them all, and if I left something out, and certainly there may be legal terms in the way this is presented that may need to change. And so if everyone could review it and get their comments back to the committee, which is Mr. Ryan and Ms. Leventhal, we could, start to develop it more.
So, I just would, just for the purposes of the discussion, right, it's, there's nothing new here that we haven't already discussed. It's having it all in one place like this is useful in draft form here. An organization, we want a partner that's an organization committed to offering cultural, recreational, and educational activities to a multi-generational and diverse population, and have a 5-year successful track record in doing so. Program uses shall include, but not be limited to, office use, concerts, plays, and other theatrical shows, classes, private events, public and nonprofit events. I think we need a little bit more detail about specifics about how many, perhaps, or hours, perhaps, but I think that's the place that we've been talking about. And the idea about having a yearly fundraiser with the township and the partner to raise money as part of a ongoing capital campaign to improve that building is a great idea. Details here about the business prospect aspects of this, how the partner interfaces with the town, ordinance issues, checking the books, be able to inspect things, having the town have access to the building. At least at first glance, it looks pretty complete, although I think, we should definitely, I think we should all spend some time reviewing this draft and maybe plan to, if people have comments about it, maybe they could forward them to Kathy and I, Ms. Leventhal and I, excuse me, and then we'll schedule a discussion on people's comments, perhaps at the next meeting. I think that probably is enough time.
And perhaps what we could do is aim for finalizing it at the second meeting in October so that we can get it out in enough time to get it around and people responding.
Just a couple of,
No, I was just going to say, because the interim manager ends December 31st.
Yes.
just organizationally, I think that we should have a section of this which deals with qualifications, and then a section of this which deals with their proposal, because I think it's two different things. First, they have to prove to us that they're qualified based on some of the things you're talking about, and then there's a whole, what's the vision, what's the proposal? And then I think that there's a section here on requirements. You know, what are we going to require of any kind of partnership? I would be a little more specific on under both qualifications and the proposal for them to be more specific about their staffing plans, particularly how they're going to staff it every day, or are they going to staff it every day? And I think that goes to Mr. Ryan's question about hours and use, the scope. The whole fees, I think we didn't ask a question about how they envision charging fees, or if they want to charge fees. And I would also include something in general about revenue. How do they see generating revenue in addition to this one annual fundraiser? How would they generate revenue to help support the building?
Well, I think if you look at one of the points on this, I think it's intentionally drawn in a way to invite bidders to be specific about proposals. I would not necessarily want to tightly constrain things and find out that we may have missed an opportunity. Somebody may be willing to do something that could be very lucrative for us that we haven't thought of, and I'd be afraid if we drew the specification too tightly, we might miss an opportunity to have that conversation.
No, but I do think you have to ask, what is the proposal? I mean, what are they planning to do? And
Include the revenue discussions in it, sort of, but yeah, I see your point.
anything else?
Just one thing that struck me, and I'm sensitive to your comment there, Mr. Ryan, about not making it too tight. But if there is any sort of minimum, for lack of a better word, criteria on quote unquote success, what was it, 5 years of successful something, I can't remember.
Track
the wording.
record.
Track record, yes. I don't know if there's any kind of floor that we have for that. I'm not sure what that would be, to be honest, but if there is any floor, because obviously they're going to try to present themselves as best they can, so I mean, we don't have to draw that tighter, but if there's any kind of floor for what that successful is defined as, maybe we want to include that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, Mr. Manning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will have this on for discussion again at the next meeting? And we'll have a revised, request for proposal. Okay, the item of residential fences, 4 feet versus 6 feet. We heard Mr. Gonzalez. I did receive his letter. I think, Mr. Manning, you and I may have been the only ones to receive that 4 or 5 page document from someone who went around town and identified every property that has a 6-foot fence already. And I think there's always been confusion as to what we allow and how much of a 6-foot portion we allow or don't.
Which was settled, I think, when we had that issue about 2 years ago.
Right, but there are people who did put 6-foot fences up based on the building department's
Yes.
Permission. And I think that, Mr. Gonzalez raises a good point that there are issues now. This is a different time. It used to be you could have your children in the backyard. Now people are a lot different. You've got to be a lot more protective of your children, your property, animals. People have their animals in the backyards, and I think I'm persuaded to really take a look at this 4-foot versus 6-foot and kind of tip towards the going higher here. I'm not sure that it makes sense to have, I don't know if it's just the back that's 6 foot or all of it's 6 foot. I guess if you're convinced that it should be 6 foot, you should be allowed 6 foot all around the property. So I wanted to put it up here just to get what your thoughts were, to see if there's any feelings we have on the Township Committee that we can charge a subcommittee to work on this and bring it back. Any thoughts? Mr. Ryan?
It seems to me if you want to do something like this, and I'm not opposed to figuring out a way to do something like this, the best way to do it is to try and figure out some objective criteria where, if you meet such and such a set of criteria, you're allowed to put a 6-foot fence up. You know, the rules are written right now such that it's very easy to do a 4-foot fence, and what you probably want to end up doing, right, is pick places where you make it 6.
Well, they call it a variance, Mr.
But, well, I understand that. Do we want to have everybody who wants to have a 6-foot fence in certain areas request a variance and pay for that process?
I don't know what you want, but I think that you can't draft an ordinance that does that. I think that you draft an ordinance that establishes, the way the ordinance right now is, it says residential, okay? In commercial zones, it's 6 feet. Residential zones is 4 feet. If people want relief from that, they can make an application, and that they're entitled to get a variance. But I don't think you can do it any other way.
Would you be able to have different size fences in different zones?
Yes.
So an R17 could have a different size height fence than a different zone?
But an R2, yes.
I mean,
Or are there other, conditions that could apply?
I think if you do that, Mr. Ryan, if you have 2 kids, you can get it, or if you have 4 kids, you can
Oh,
get it.
I didn't mean a condition
I
in
think
that,
it
I
would
meant a
be-
condition like a zoning condition. Are there, lot size less than a certain amount, or?
And I just wanted to, Mayor, and I don't mean to correct you or contradict you, but you can't have a fence all over your property. Okay? You can't
Yeah,
have.
what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
You cannot have a fence all over your, you cannot have a front yard fence.
no, I understood
Okay,
that.
but
But
I
you can have 3 backyard fences,
Right,
right? Each side and the back?
yes. Contiguous with the building setbacks, et cetera. So I mean, the ordinance is pretty specific in terms of that. I
Right.
just didn't want there to be any confusion.
No, I was suggesting not to change the base of the ordinance, that you still would keep it in your backyard, you wouldn't be allowed to have it in your front yard, it can't be further than the front of your property, blah, blah, blah. But just change the height from 4 to 6. Mr. Brownlee?
No, I'm fine.
Anyone else?
I'd have to be convinced about this being a valuable change. Aesthetically, I don't go for it. I'm not really convinced that 2 more feet will provide that much more safety. It would provide more privacy, but that's not the milieu kind of experience that we have in Maplewood in terms of closing off a lot. So I'm definitely interested in hearing more, both amongst us and the residents. And I look forward to that, but at this point.
Well, we'd have to have somebody try and propose an alternative to the current zoning for us to discuss.
Right. I think one thing, just before I get to, one thing we can do is, the Board of Adjustment deals with a lot of these requests. So one of the things that we do get is an annual report from the Board of Adjustment. And so we are seeing a market out there. People are making these requests. Now, whether, everyone's going to make the request, I don't know, but if you made it by right. Mrs. Larrier.
I guess I was going to say pretty much the same that Ms. Leventhal mentioned. I don't see a huge safety difference between 4 and 6. I do see a great privacy difference. I think, in fact, what 6 does is hampers some of what we have been saying is a way to keep us safe, is to keep your neighbors so that everybody's pretty much looking out for one another, and I think that a 6-foot fence tends to hamper that a little bit. I know because I have a 6-foot fence on a lot adjacent to mine, and we can't really keep an eye on his property because I'm short, I can't help it. So I would have to be convinced also. I'm satisfied with the fact that there are people who need 6-foot fences for whatever reason, and that's why we have a zoning board of adjustment.
Well, it would be useful to me to know how many times we get requests for this and how often they're granted. If every time somebody comes in and requests a variance for a 6-foot fence and gets it, then I don't know the facts, right? But if a substantial number of variance requests for 6-foot fences are granted, then we are de facto allowing them, right? So maybe we ought to get a little more data and figure that out.
Ms. Fritzen, if you can get that data for the last 3 years from the Board of Adjustment, it would be helpful. Mr. Brownlee?
No, upon receiving that, I'd be curious also, you talked about whether or not it was possible to do it by zone, and it'd be curious to see whether or not the requests that have been granted follow any zoning patterns, for example.
That's good. That's an
One thing we do allow in a residential property is if they abut a commercial property, you can have 6 foot.
Right.
I'm wondering if you were to abut another town. We have some backyards that, we have 5 towns around us, and some backyards touch those towns, and I wonder if that maybe, is that the kind of criteria that we'd be allowed to do? I guess we could do something like that, right?
Yeah, we might be able to draft something like that.
Or we could go and say if it's a R2 for,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, clearly there's no question about that one. I mean, you can make a distinction between residential zones if you so chose.
okay. So let's get that information. Let's put it back, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, along with that information, could we get the ordinance itself?
Yeah. Get a copy of the ordinance to everybody.
Sure.
And get that information from the Board of Adjustment. I'll also get that information out about all the houses that this individual, who didn't sign it, by the way. It looks like it's from Mr. Manning, the way it's drafted. But he didn't do it, unless you want to confess tonight. No, okay. So we'll get that copy out to everyone.
You want to refer to the Planning and Engineering Committee just to look?
No, I think if anything, it would be code.
Okay.
Maybe that could work and go to the Code Enforcement Committee and take a look at it. Both of you are on it? Who's on that?
3 of us.
Oh, so it's 2-1 already. That's good. That's a good committee to take a look at. Okay, and then let's try to bring this back here next month and have the conversation again.
So you want code to, the data will come to us, the code will meet and bring our recommendations back.
Yeah. Or you might have questions or, more information that we
Yeah,
need. I mean, there might be other ways we could take a look at, like what South Orange does and things like that. So, Mr. Gonzalez, we're going to look at it some more. So maybe, I can't tell you what you have to do for your personal situation, but, yeah, okay, but we are going to take a look at it, and you kind of heard what the thoughts are up here. Garbage collection ordinance. This has become, as I said earlier, an issue that we're seeing more garbage bags on the street. And I believe the code enforcement looked at this, and what did you,
We did.
why don't you say what you've come up with?
Okay, well, actually, Mrs. Brownlee had brought it to the attention of Mr. Brownlee, who brought it to...
Did you call him Mrs. Brownlee?
Oh, I said Mrs. Brownlee
Mrs.
brought it to
Brownlee,
the attention of
okay.
Mr. Brownlee, who brought
All
it to
right.
our attention. And the code subcommittee did meet because there's been staging by the vendors, the household garbage pickup companies. And then in addition, there's been residential homeowners who have put their trash out at the curb in bags instead of leaving it where it's intended to be by ordinance, which is behind the front of the house. So we did discuss it with Mr. Mittermeier, our code official. I asked Mr. Rowe to come to the meeting, our health officer. Just Mr. Brownlee and myself were able to be there, and our assistant administrator did join us. So we asked Mr. Rowe, after our discussion, which summarizes the discussion, to draft a flyer that he could use with specifically the residents. In terms of the companies, what has been done is that Mr. Desiderio has been in touch with them, and they have been told in no uncertain terms that our ordinances are such that they cannot be staging. If the truck is at one end of the block and they're staging at the other end of the block, okay, but it's been even like 2 hours or longer at times. In terms of the residents, they were notified. It has seemed to stop, but this flyer would be able to be put on our website and be given to anyone who, not being home, Mr. Rowe wouldn't be able to speak with. It talks about the garbage being kept in containers that aren't overflowing and that are covered. It talks about rubbish and garbage being placed or kept on the property not nearer to the street line than the front of the house. And that this means on garbage collection days, it may not be placed closer to the street than the front of the house. And it goes on to talk about recycling and what hours to put out recycling and by what time to bring your cans back in, your baskets back in. So this is our recommendation, that we follow through in this manner with especially the residence issue, and hopefully with more education, or maybe for some residents the first time, being educated as to this, we won't have the issue continuing.
So, Mr. Manning, these are existing codes. How are we going to educate people? What are we doing to let people know that they can't put these bags on the curb?
We are going to be sending out a newsflash and an email blast. We will be putting an article in the next Maple leaflet.
And what, are we sending anybody on the street? And if we see this, I mean, are our inspectors going to have these so that if they see this, they can drop it into the
That would be,
door?
I hadn't thought of that, but
Okay.
yes, that's a great idea.
Okay. Anything else on this? That seems to be,
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Brown.
this doesn't change anything in the ordinance. It's strictly a restatement of what's already in place. The fact that we had come out publicly to admonish the companies not to stage garbage, and then seeing, in fact, that garbage was being staged by residents, I thought was going to put us in an untenable position, because it's okay here, but it's not okay here. And so this is simply stating, or restating, if you will, the existing ordinance, and letting them know that, that way we're not kind of put in an awkward position where, someone calls and says, hey, there's garbage being staged, but it's in fact being staged by a resident. I mean, how do you distinguish between the two cases? So this clarifies things.
Okay. All right. Next item is the jitney fee increase proposal for 2014. As you received a memo from the Public Works Committee that we looked at the revenue and expenses of the jitney operation for all of 2012 and year-to-date for 2013, and we made some projections for 2014. And we're proposing a revenue formula that is as follows: that total revenue from the jitney passes, the per-ride cash fare, and the margin between the jitney parking combo passes and the parking passes should equal annually 35% of the jitney expenses. And as we looked at the 2012, the revenue from those three sources raised about 34%. We're projecting this year about 33%. And next year, what we're suggesting is an increase in the jitney pass and the jitney parking combination pass of $7 a year, taking it from a jitney pass from $85 a year to $92 a year, and a jitney parking combination pass from $215 a year to $222 a year. We're not proposing any increase in the parking pass, and we're not proposing any increase in the dollar per ride cash fare. We are planning to expand the Jitney route next year from 3 routes to 4 routes. We expect new ridership from some of the new housing being built, and also we have some ridership pressure that exists already on the Hilton and Parker routes. We provide roughly 80,000 one-way, in 2012, we provided 80,000 one-way rides, which equals about 333 one-way rides per day. So the recommendation from the Public Works Committee is to increase the Jitney Pass from $85 to $92, and the combination Jitney Parking Pass from $215 to $222. Any questions or comments?
So you're specifically you're not proposing increasing the parking fees at all, or just
Correct.
the parking aspect? Nothing about the parking fees would change?
Correct.
I'm sorry, what, the change in the Jitney parking combo would be what?
$7, $215 to $222. It's on the first page.
Well, then what's the second page?
Okay.
It looks different, unless I'm not reading it. Okay. But the major piece is that there's a $7 increase, which is Jitney increase.
Yes.
I'm sorry, is the single ridership, that's just not?
You're right, I'm sorry, it is. It's 225 to 232.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
The single ridership, is
Doesn't
that
change.
insignificant in number?
No, we get about $20,000 a year.
Is there a reason why we didn't raise that also?
Some of it is because the mechanics of it, if, just throwing $1 in as opposed to change and all that, then we have to count change, and it just becomes, it's also that there was some thought from Mr. Burbank that it might decrease, an increase in the daily fare, which we talked about, might decrease the daily ridership. Don't know why, but that's what he suggested to us, that may be a problem.
I would just think the logistics of having to collect $1.25 instead of $1, and you wouldn't want to make it $2. That would be a
Right.
exorbitant
It's a
increase.
100% increase. So,
Seem unreasonable to me.
is everybody okay with the $7 increase on the Jitney from 85 to 92, and the $7 on the Jitney parking combo from 225 to 232? Sorry, there was a typo there.
That's right in the spreadsheet.
Yes.
Okay. Let's get a motion to instruct Mr. Desiderio to prepare the resolution to an ordinance, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So there are no parking fee changes.
Okay, let me do it again.
No, I'm sorry. So there's other parking fees,
Yeah,
right?
let me-
There's the
let me-
overnight parking in other places. We're not going to change that at all.
No, this is just commuter parking.
Got it. Okay. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
So there's no increase for the parking passes for commuters and the parking passes for teachers. And the only increase is a $7 increase in the Jitney parking combination pass from 225 to 232. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Desiderio, you'll make that happen.
It shall.
Ms. Leventhal, rental registration?
Again, back to our code subcommittee. Mr. Mittermeier made a proposal that we considered, and we're bringing a recommendation to the Township Committee to change the inspection time period on properties that have rental registrations. The way he worded it was, instead of each rental unit shall be inspected at least once every 12-month period, it is now proposed that each rental unit shall be inspected at least once every 24-month period, If there are reported issues within a unit or building, then the subject site shall be inspected once every 12 months until 2 inspections have passed without critical or major issues. We would continue to schedule appointments for inspections that work with the residents' schedule as much as possible. This, it came to us because of the additional housing that's being developed, the 50 units and the 50 units at Denell, 124 units at Burnett. And the ability of the present staffing to be able to carry the inspections forward. In our discussion, we understood that the staff do stay with the property that has an issue until it's resolved. And it being with the code committee for quite a while, I know that some things take years to resolve, but they're possibly back in court. There's a very possibly lengthy process that favors the resident if it's not a really critical situation. So they would continue all of that, but are asking for the 24-month period on properties that don't have major issues. And of course, hopefully, well, I shouldn't say of course, hopefully new residential units that I had just described would be without major issues for a while. So the 2 years would work very, very well with that.
Any comments?
I mean, it seems like a reasonable idea to me. I just, can you quantify major issue, or, you said earlier, without reported issues. I mean, is it reported or is it convicted, or? I'm in favor of the idea as long as you can have, specific objective ways of saying this person doesn't need to be inspected, this person does.
Well, everybody would be inspected every 2 years
Right.
on a cycle. If, according to the codes, just the process just as it is now, the codes just as they are now, there comes out issues that have to be followed, may have to go to court. That would all continue, and they would continue to do the inspections the way they are now until it was cleared up, and then it would go into the new cycle. So it's not, there's nothing that has to, it's already defined. The major issues are defined already.
So if I have a rental property and it's been inspected and I have violations of the building code, what I thought I heard you saying was I have a property, it's been inspected, and I have violations of the building code, and because of that, I have to be inspected more frequently than somebody who...
Yes.
Okay, so
But it's the same.
That isn't what you
But
just
it's the
said.
same frequency as it is now. That would not change.
Right.
The point is, though, that if a property has not had that, then they would be able to be inspected less.
Okay. Do you have issues with, converting from, are we going to charge people the same amount for an inspection? Okay.
Yeah, there was
So
no...
it doesn't,
Nothing else changes.
And that doesn't sound like...
so it's just all of a sudden that inspection is going to be good for 2 years?
Yeah, they get a bonus.
Yeah, okay.
Essentially, they get a waiver for the second year if they have nothing. I think it's a good idea.
Right.
One suggestion I have is, and Mr. Desideri, let us know if this passes the legal test here, sort of like a new car. A new car gets waived on 5 years for inspection, I believe it is. And I'm wondering, with the new apartments going up, is it possible to waive the inspections for some period of time? I mean, I don't understand why we would go into the station house or maybe would cross. Did you talk about this at all?
To make it a longer period of time, no. But that seems like something
What I'm suggesting is maybe a new apartment doesn't get inspected for the first 3 years or something like that. And is that something that legally would fly?
Let me think about it.
Okay.
Remember that the state does come in every 5 years,
That
and
doesn't change.
that doesn't
Well,
change.
the state comes in the bigger multifamilies anyway.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the state comes in the bigger multifamily units anyway.
Right. And there was this, it'll come back to me, there's another piece.
Well,
that doesn't change.
you still register a change of occupancy, right? So that doesn't seem, that, and you're not proposing making that go away, right?
Yeah, nothing changes, again, except for the lessening of the frequency, if there haven't been any issues. And understanding, another point maybe to delineate is, recognizing, yes, that the new constructions would add to the workload, but this isn't being done specifically for those new residents, those new residences, excuse me. This isn't like a favor, if you will, for them. This is merely a recognition that there are properties, of which some of those would be the new ones, presumably, but not necessarily, that would have less of a need for as frequent an inspection. So in that sense, it could have lowers the overall workload because there's certain properties that don't need it as often.
Mrs. Larrier? Did you, oh, you thought you had something to say? Okay. Ms. Leventhal.
Another thing that stays the same is that if there's a report on a property, say they're, a year into the 2-year period and somehow there's an issue, then there is a visit. So it does not, obviously doesn't wait for the 2 years. It's like it is now. That does not change.
Okay. It seems like we have some agreement to move forward on the change. What I would suggest is you could get that to Mr. Desiderio. Maybe on this new stuff, you don't have to deal with it, because if they get inspected the first year, then they get 2 years. So I would just leave it as it is. Just go with what you're suggesting.
Oh, okay.
I do not have that language from Mr.
Yes,
McCoy.
I will forward it to you.
Do we need to see it? Can we put it on, or do you want to discuss it anymore?
What I could do is when I send it to Mr. Desiderio, I copy everyone.
Yeah, but I'm asking when he drafts the new
Well,
order.
when was this going to be in effect? Is it okay to have another cycle of comment before we introduce? Will that get in the way
Before
of
we
your schedule?
introduce?
No, I think it'd be a January 1 is what it says now.
Yeah, so have another cycle of comment.
So I'll draft it and it'll be on for discussion.
Okay.
Right, so then you can do a track change so we can see what's been changed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
One paragraph.
Okay. And the last item we have here is an item close to Mr. Ryan's heart. Start time for contractors.
Close to my neighbor's heart, too.
We had, recently, we've had the contractors who work for New Jersey American Water, not for the town, come in and change the hydrants, and they are starting on every morning very early and on Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning with a jackhammer. And
Right in front of my house.
a resident had suggested, actually it happened to me too, and a resident had suggested that we might want to consider harmonizing our construction repair start time on a weekend with our equipment for home maintenance, lawn care, and vehicle maintenance on a weekend. And on the weekend, it's 8 a.m. on Saturdays for those lawn maintenance, and yet we have 7 a.m. for construction. Now, Mr. Manning and I had a brief conversation with Mr. Burbank, who thought that it would be difficult for the construction crews not to start at 7 during the week. But he thought on weekends, that would be okay. Additionally, Mr. Malavasi said that when he does contracts out, he does start the Saturday work at 8 o'clock at least or later. So we might want to consider at least changing the 7 o'clock on the Saturday, and it's 11 on Sunday, I'm sorry. This just deals with Saturday. So we'd have to, I think there's no problem on the Sunday because that's even later. So what do people think about that?
I did hear or read the remark, sorry, I did read the remark about it would be difficult for the work to start during the week later than 7. I didn't necessarily understand, other than simply stating that, what the rationale for that was.
Mr. Manning?
We were told that, for example, in the summer, they want to start the work when it's cooler in the day so that they can get more work done. In our particular case, we have THI, so if we started later, the amount of work that could get done if it was called THI would shrink. But even for construction crews, they want to be out early when it's cooler to do that, and in the winter when they have light.
Everybody okay with making the change?
So that would bring it to 8 o'clock.
So we'd bring it the change would be 8 o'clock on a start time on Saturday. You need a motion?
So to simplify it, basically, before, lawn stuff could start later, contractors could start earlier, and now we're basically syncing them up so they can both start on the weekend.
On Saturday.
They can have to start the same time. We're moving the contractor's time to be later to coincide with what is already in place for the lawn folks, if you will.
Correct. And but I just want to be clear about that. In the construction repair, during the week, it would still start at 7 a.m.
Okay.
With the lawn maintenance, during the week, it's 7:30 a.m.
Why did I think it was 8?
I thought it was 8 too.
No, Saturday, 8.
Saturdays.
No,
During the week, it's 7:30.
During the week is 7:30? Okay, I thought it was 8.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're changing is the Saturday to make it not a 7 a.m. start, but an 8 a.m. start, consistent with the lawns on Saturday. For construction.
Right, but on the weekdays, there'll still be the half-hour discrepancy.
Correct.
And Mayor, I'm just looking at this, and it actually doesn't address the issue of Sundays.
That's correct.
What do you want to do for Sundays?
I don't think there's much construction on Sunday, but I do think if it I think we ought to put maybe the same 11 a.m. and cease by 6 p.m.
Yeah, lawn care is, okay, so 11, okay.
Right.
Sunday, okay.
So on Sunday, even though it's hot, you're still going to have to start later.
Well, we're not doing any work.
Typically, there's no construction work
Right.
done on Sunday, except if there's an emergency.
Right.
And if there's an emergency, they'll be doing it
Later.
whenever
they have to.
we have to.
Well, that's different, yeah.
Okay? You got that, Mr. Desiderio?
I got it.
Okay. So let's just bring that back for a vote.
And that will be for intro, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, the consent agenda. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We have our second public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee?
My name is Ruth Ross. I live at 169 Maplewood Avenue. And my question certainly concerns the, is there a place where I can get the definition and a copy of the codes, the violations, and the issues?
We have a code book at Town Hall where you could go take a look at. There's also online, you can go into, on the internet and get access our code that way.
I think it's e360.com.
And I would assume there's copies in the library. Ms. Fritzen?
Correct.
would
But
assume,
you
yeah.
can go online and it's completely up to date.
So there's Town Hall at the clerk's office, the library, and online.
And online is on our very own website. You can get access into it.
Yes, I would prefer not to have to do everything online these days.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
I can go to town hall.
Town Hall or the library.
Copy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and while I'm here, since I live right on Maplewood Avenue, something has come up, and in several situations I have requested that something be done by the situation, by the people in question, and that is these huge trucks that are delivering and picking up right in the village, some right on Maplewood Avenue, some on Highland Place, that leave their motor running. And I'm concerned in this case not only about the noise, obviously, but the fumes. And in several cases, yes, I have gone down and asked them to, shut their motor off. And in 3 cases, they have each complied. One man said no, he couldn't because it was connected to the refrigeration. Now, I do happen to know that for the most part, in these big, huge trucks, the refrigeration unit is separate from the actual motor of the truck. So I didn't want to get street and tell him what I thought, but I said, okay. But I know that there are signs around here and there that say no idling, but I think it would be very helpful to have these signs, not only for these trucks, but the cars and the, that also leave themselves idling for periods of time that it's distracting and harmful to all of us who live and work in the village. So that there's no idling. I would appreciate certainly not only more signs, but certainly, I don't know how there could be more enforcement about it, but other than the personal enforcement that I certainly involve myself in so far politely, but you never can tell. So that's my, my request. And I want to add, since I live in the village and I drive in the village, I am supportive of the decrease on Valley Street for the MPH. And I think there needs to be more, even though I'm sometimes, do my own little violations. I think there probably need to be more signs around about, speed limits, not only in the village, but, around in the environment. Because I've been passed routinely by cars and SUVs that are clearly, well past the speed limit. Okay, thank you.
Just, Ms. Ross, just on the idling, we've spoken to the chief of police, and he's informed his officers to issue tickets. If there is a truck or a car idling, there's no reason for you to have to do that. You can just call the police and let them know, and they will come and tell them to shut it off or give them a ticket.
Right. I see very few police officers in and around the village. Every now and then there's a car that zips by, but I don't see any patrolmen on foot.
You can just call the police.
Okay.
Not 911, but just call the regular. And wherever the car is, the car will go to the village and talk to the truck driver. Because they're pretty clear about enforcing that 3-minute limit.
So far, these guys have been, compliant and polite to me, and, there was one exception, and I didn't confront him.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay.
My name is Gideon, 32 Headley Place.
Mr. Roman, you're going up next to
My
me.
name is Gideon Roman, 32 Headley Place. We're back having some conversations about the post office problems that we've been trying to address. And there's some questions, and I'll just ask a couple of questions regarding, I'll tell you what they are. Request that the narratives, conceptual plans, and all respondents made public available for comments. Is that an issue, or we're okay with that? Should I repeat it?
Why don't you go through all your questions?
The other one, actually, there's two of them. Why there's an FAQ number 5, which allows public comments and however, the township open the creative proposals. You guys are open to creative proposals, and the question is why you put them in there. So those are the questions, basic questions.
On the first, Mr. Desiderio, the question was, can the narratives that were submitted be made public?
The answer is probably not. They contain, and we're just in the process of going through them, but they appear to contain proprietary and financial information, and as such are exempt from open public records requests.
What if they just provide conceptual ideas rather than just financial information? Would that be something that the public can have to look at, be able to see, if it's not financial?
The answer is I have not actually looked at them. The Economic Development Committee is going to meet on Thursday, but it's a fair question. Let me take a look at them and see if it can be done. I mean, the issue, and I understand the financial information, I understand your point there, but conceptual design could still be proprietary. And the issue is that we've solicited these and attempted to get them to do them in good faith, and to expose that to competition may be fundamentally unfair to those people. So that's what we have to look at.
Well, I thought it would be open to competition anyway, right? I mean, we're competing contractors or companies to get the job, and it's based upon a few things that they do or they don't do, meaning, they have the capability to do that, but also primarily a lot of people are concerned about the conceptual aspect of the proposals rather than just everything else that they can do and not do based upon their history and based upon their financial abilities and so forth. But
Well, I think Mr. Desiderio answered the question.
But he also said that the conceptual thing would not be, because it's also, opens it up to other people.
Right.
So is there a way for somebody in town to know what the conceptuals are before something?
Not if it's deemed to be proprietary.
Why are they proprietary?
Well, every developer has their proposal, so we're going to be taking a look at it. So that's, you got your answer, and we're going to go with what Mr. Desiderio says. He's going to take a look at it tomorrow.
To see whether or not the public can look at them.
Well, he's going to take a look at them tomorrow, and we're going to be discussing it Thursday.
Okay. So
What's the second question?
So the second question on FAQ number 5, you entered a sentence there that allows to open and creative, submission by other people rather than the companies. I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not exactly sure what the question is.
Yeah,
So,
the question is why you put that in there. So the question is, apparently you put a sentence in the, so that the township is also open to creative proposals in which you would be continue to own the land. In other words, you're open for everybody else to.
right, it was a frequently asked question.
Right.
And someone asked the question, are we only selling the land? And we said, I think there's two sentences to that frequently asked response, or the response to that question. There's two sentences. One says that it was our intention to sell the land for the development, but that we're open to creative proposals where the township would retain ownership. If someone wanted to potentially rent the land from us for 100 years or something like that.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? So you wanted to...
Good evening, it's Dave Helmkamp from 571 Prospect. I just wanted to bring you guys the slides that we used last night at the Engage Maplewood meeting, and also provide you a copy of the survey that was online, which you probably didn't have a reason to print. Just briefly, there are about 25 new attendees. We spent a couple of hours going through these slides, pretty much followed the slides as they appear here. The slides themselves pretty much followed the survey exactly as it was presented online. So there was discussion around the first half of the survey, which was questions about where people go for information on either governmental issues or non-governmental issues, and there's some general conversation around that point. And then the second half were questions around their awareness of the post office and their interest in seeing design proposals. The first set of questions are really intended to be sort of just a first step to sort of start a conversation. What we'd kind of like to do with them is find someone who's interested in that question and take it a little bit further and see what improvements could be made that would be convenient to people. Is it not coming through?
It's kind of quiet. I just want to make sure people can hear.
Thank you. So that was sort of the initial step, and yes, I can see the difference. And the second questions were around, along with the questions we presented the timelines, we understood it of the developer selection process and had some discussion around that. The sense in the room was, at least to the extent that people expressed themselves, pretty much unanimous that people wanted to see some or all of the design aspects of the proposals, and also discussion around wanting to understand the criteria for selecting a developer and understanding how the criteria actually connect to specific goals in the village or the township. Why one proposal better addresses a collection of goals than the other, for example. Similar sentiments were reflected in the survey results too. That I'll leave here. So that was the gist of it. We hope to do this sort of meeting periodically. We hope to do surveys periodically. Surveys are tricky. They're a learning experience to do them in a way that you're comfortable with the results. But what we described to the group last night was that they were really just kind of directional. They're clearly not a scientific survey, and anyone who, if you have someone in a room who's familiar with surveys, they can show you immediately where some of your weaknesses may be. So it's really to foster discussion and not reach firm conclusions. But they do engage people, and that's kind of nice. So I just wanted to provide that update. I do have a question though. Outreach is certainly something we spend a lot of time on, and to an extent we're kind of a victim, or at least an example of our own cause. It's really hard to find the time to do the outreach. One simple step we wanted to do next was connect with neighborhood associations. And I was just wondering if there's a central list of contacts for those that just might make it easier to send out some emails.
If you can come up with one, I'd love to have a copy.
Okay.
So the answer is not current.
I promise to bring it to you.
Okay.
All right, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Nick Schwartzhall. I live at 89 Maplewood Avenue. And I also just wanted to briefly address a couple of questions around the redevelopment of the post office site. Understanding that there's proprietary information, but also understanding that this is probably the project that will have the biggest impact on the quality of life in our town for quite a long time. Would it be possible to ask the developers who are shortlisted to make a public presentation of their ideas with the information that they would be comfortable providing to the public?
We haven't decided that yet. We are still figuring out the next stage, next steps. I'm sure when you put these out, you don't know what you're going to get. We got 8. Exactly. I think it's pretty robust that we got 8 responses.
That's kind of great.
And there's a lot of moving parts here because we own the land.
Yep.
There's a negotiation on the land, and we're not going to negotiate on the land publicly because that could be negotiating against ourselves. So we'll have to see. It's just it's a little difficult conceptually to think about how you could have these public discussions without a financial aspect, because sometimes design has to do with back and forth trades on the amount of money they're willing to give us.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but I think, you know, having lived in many other cities where there are such public presentations of design ideas, if we were able to leave it to the developer to say, this is what I'm comfortable sharing publicly, that might ameliorate that concern.
We'll certainly think about it. I can't commit to saying that that's what we're going to do. We have to talk about it.
No, I wouldn't expect you to commit at this meeting, but I would like to just express my feeling that as much public buy-in to whatever the result is going to be best for us all in the long term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anyone else want to speak to the Township Committee? Okay, we're going to close the second public comment period. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning.
Just a few items. Want to remind everyone that the farmers market is open and fall produce is in every Monday from 2 to 7, Indiana parking lot, Indiana and Springfield Avenue. If you haven't done it already, or, well, if you're not aware, this is National Disaster Preparedness Month, and we're encouraging people to go on, if you haven't already, to our website and sign up for our Code Red alerts and also for our email reminders. You sign up for Code Red on our website in the upper right-hand corner by pressing the Code Red button, clicking there, and you can send us your email address at reminder@twp.maplewood.nj.us, and you will receive our email blasts. Code Red is very important, particularly in the time we have in the past for the hurricanes, et cetera, so want to get information out to people if they would sign up. In line with National Disaster Preparedness Month, our Community Emergency Response Team on this Thursday, the 19th, in this room at 7:30, will be doing a disaster preparedness presentation about what residents can do to prepare themselves for disaster. So I encourage people to come on out. Town Hall is now open again on the first and third Tuesdays of the month from 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock, from 9 until 7. So if you have any business that you need to do and you can't make it during the day because you're working, come on out on the first and third Tuesdays, 7 o'clock. And that's it, unless there are questions.
Mrs. Larrier.
Just one. On the 19th, will you be soliciting volunteers for?
I do not know if they are going to be soliciting volunteers because it has to do with the next class, but I assume that they'll be telling people about the organization. I won't be there on the 19th, but I think Mr. Willis, who's heading the organization right at the moment, will, I'll send him an email and to remind him to do that, to solicit volunteers.
Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Desiderio?
I have no report, Mayor.
Anything from Mr. Desiderio? Ms. Fritzen?
Couple things, Mayor. The Senate election is Wednesday, October 16th. All of our polling locations from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then we have a final late-night voter registration for Wednesday night, September 25th, till 9 p.m. in the clerk's office for new voters to register. We have our volunteer dinner set for Tuesday, October 22nd. I've been reaching out to all of our board and committee members, as well as the CERT members, Maplewood Volunteer First Aid Squad, Police Reserves, and that'll be at the community center. Along the same lines, you got a draft of the boards and committees, and I would appreciate any comments that you have so that we're really up to date, and a spreadsheet that was also tweaked with new people that have expressed interest in being volunteers on our various boards and committees. Then the other item is I gave you tonight in your mail, information on a ABC license, licensee that's going to be suspended for 15 days in November for selling to a minor. So you have that information, and that information was sent to myself and the police chief and forwarded to you as the local ABC.
Is that it?
I would have more, but Mr. Desiderio would get very mad at me.
And where are we meeting at the next meeting?
Next meeting is at the Maplewood Municipal Building, 574 Valley Street.
Okay, so we've exhausted our stay here?
We're exhausted.
Okay.
Can I take my chair? It's tall.
Did you enjoy your 5 meetings here?
I enjoyed the air conditioning, I have to be honest about that.
It makes you not forget things when you come here.
Okay. Anything from Ms. Fritzen? Okay. Reports from elected officials. Mr. Brownlee?
No report.
Ms. Leventhal?
I have a few things, Mayor. I'd like to go to the, back to the idling in the village. If there isn't already a idling prohibited sign on Highland as it intersects Maplewood Avenue, where the trucks do generally idle, I'd like to request that we put one up there. We just did it in another location down past Baker on Maplewood Avenue, and it's been effective.
Highland and
Highland and Maplewood Avenue on the south west, well, the south side.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. October 5th, on Saturday, from 8:30 to 4, is the Essex County Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. I'd like to give this so that it can be put on the website so that people know, since we don't have that available right in town. In the Environmental Advisory Subcommittee, we've begun to talk about community choice energy aggregation. This is a way of purchasing energy that is starting to take hold, especially in the Midwest, but also some towns in New Jersey are starting to do it. What we are doing is meeting with some vendors to learn about what community energy aggregation is, and different aspects of how we can buy cheaper energy as a community, and in fact, increase the greenness of our electricity. This is solely for electricity. The program, as it exists, is an opt-out program for residential properties and an opt-in program for business properties. We are only beginning to learn about this, so we'll have lots of more information, and if we do propose, we bring it back here and propose to go forward with it, there'll be a lot of education. We think at this point that maybe in January, our subcommittee will have a recommendation to bring. It's a new process. It involves the entire town. And we think that we will need to, again, engage with a lot of education. But it is a way to decrease our electricity costs while increasing the green power that we'd be using. So there'll be more on that. The Echo Tour, which was held by the Green Team this past Sunday, was a tremendous success. There were homes all over town with different green, environmentally friendly, cost-saving initiatives like solar roofs, drip irrigation, insulation. There was even chickens that people could go visit. One resident had 60 visitors, and we know that people went away with a lot of information, and some of the vendors that actually installed, for instance, installation and solar panels were on site. They were at the homes to talk about their work and the energy and financial savings that can be had from these kinds of efforts. We're looking forward to doing this again next year, so stay tuned. Maplewood Loves Wellness is starting on Saturday. It starts with a fair at 12 o'clock in Memorial Park on the street right there that bisects the park. Goes from 12 to 3, the fair. It's going to be really terrific. We have about 50, well, over 50 vendors, providers, and demonstrations, everything from kids yoga to chair yoga to Zumba. We have the fire safety van coming from St. Barnabas. Our own fire department will be able to stop by. You can come and have a demonstration yourself with the police department with fatal vision goggles, which are an apparatus that you put on and you try to walk across a 12-foot distance or so, and it mimics drinking while intoxicated. So it's an interesting experience. There'll be many providers from the community, nutrition, therapies, etc. So please come by. There'll be a lot of information for people, all ages. Everything's free. There'll be many activities for children too, and the Y is involved with us.
You have the bacon booth this year, right?
That's the one that you signed up for.
Bacon.
I'd just also like to mention that I visited hydroponic gardens, one in Newark and one in Orange, and there are people within our community that are interested in exploring this more. This is gardening with water and nutrients. There's no soil involved. It is very lightweight kind of adventure. It can be put on a roof. It can be put into a small space. The Orange facility is selling, it's part of Urban Farms, and it's selling to places like Arturo's, etc. Herbs, small greens. It's a fascinating kind of thing. So we may hear more from people in the community that are interested in doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan?
I have no items this evening, Mayor.
Mrs. Larrier?
No report, Mayor.
I have 4 items. One, I went to the funeral of Tamir Harry on Friday and brought you back just to see. It was a celebration of his very short life, but there were a lot of people there to support the family, which was good.
Yeah, my son did.
The library board has, well, first off, the Library Foundation is having a fundraiser at the library on October 11th called Death in the Stacks. It's a murder mystery fundraiser. And the library board has given the foundation permission to utilize the building on, it's a Friday, October 11th, and to serve alcohol. And we need to get the approval of the Township Committee on a case-by-case basis. So this is a request from the library board. No. So can we get a motion to approve the serving of alcohol? It'll only be for adults 21 and over will be allowed, that's it. And this will be for the fundraiser on October 11th, Death in the Stacks. Is there a motion?
I would move to allow it.
Oh, sorry.
Well, let's motion and second, then we can, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Larrier?
Maybe I was premature in that second, only only 21-year-old and older will be allowed into the
Yes.
event?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any discussion?
Is the library closed?
Yes. For that evening.
Pardon?
For that evening, yes. Library is closed, and only 21 and older will be allowed in the library that evening.
Mayor, I just wanted to mention that they did fill out an application for a social affair permit, which they did receive.
Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brownlee?
No.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Pass.
Thank you. The other thing is the Springfield Avenue Partnership. Last night, the board requested that the township remove the termination date of the Special Improvement District, which in the current ordinance, the Springfield Avenue Partnership expires on 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, 2013. We've been extending these. When we set up the Maplewood Village Alliance, we did not put a sunset provision in. When we set up the partnership, we did because it was very new to the partnership, to the Springfield Avenue, and there was some opposition there, and we wanted to see how it worked. It has now worked well since we set it up many years ago, and the request now is to certainly not let it expire, but to remove the sunset clause altogether. That's the request. Any reactions?
I didn't like the sunset clause when we first put it in, so I'd be more than happy to take it out.
It's okay. It makes sense.
Okay. So let's, we're going to need to
Do an ordinance.
do an ordinance.
You're
Okay?
going to have to do one anyway, right?
Yes. And the last is to let everyone know that this Saturday, we will be doing Talk to the Township Committee at the Department of Public Works Yard from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And unless anyone else has something, we'll get a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. We'll meet again on October 1st at 7:30 p.m. at the Maplewood Municipal Building, 574 Valley Street. Thank you. Good night.